Dr. Voltra hated paperwork. She sat behind a glowing screen staring at a growing list of reports she would have to give. Unfortunately, the Chimera Collective loved paperwork. Every slave who got injured was another hour spent behind a screen. Every slave who died generated even more paperwork, as the collective became very interested in exactly why a valuable asset had stopped generating profit. Voltra would rather perform surgery on herself. The massive chimera sat behind her desk, glaring at the holographic monitor as though it had personally insulted her. A report sat on her screen that made her blood boil. A shipping company was contesting a medical bill. Voltra sighed as she skimmed the attached complaint. The company claimed that treatment costs exceeded the value of the slave being treated. The surgery had been successful. The worker would make a full recovery. The company simply didn't want to pay for it. Voltra rubbed her temples. Then she opened the employee file. 20 years. The slave had worked for the company for 20 years. Voltra stared at the number, then checked it again. 20 years was longer than the expected lifespan for some slaves. Voltra shook her head and opened another document. Performance evaluations. One after another, the slave had been given excellent reviews. 20 years of service, and Voltra barely saw a single blemish. Voltra sat silently for several moments before moving a talon-tipped claw to the holographic screen, which flickered in response as Voltra sent them to collections. There was a soft chime from the other side of Voltra's door. Vexa pushed the office door open with her hip, a glowing tablet tucked beneath one arm. The movement was practiced. Experience had taught her that entering Dr. Voltra's office with both hands occupied was dangerous. Voltra had a habit of throwing things when annoyed, and she was almost always annoyed. The nurse stepped inside without waiting for permission. She was a chimera, though one built very differently from the doctor she worked under. Standing a little over 7 feet tall, Vexa would have been an intimidating figure almost anywhere else. Here, she merely looked normal. Her frame was lean and athletic beneath her dark medical attire, all controlled strength rather than Voltra's overwhelming bulk. Blue feathers covered her body, though hers were kept in immaculate condition. Not a single feather appeared out of place. The longer feathers along her neck and shoulders had been carefully groomed and arranged before her shift. Voltra frequently claimed this was a waste of time. Vexa frequently ignored her. Her jackal-like face was sharp and expressive, a trait she often regretted around Voltra. Golden eyes scanned the room before settling on the massive physician behind her desk. Her ears were angled backward slightly, a clear sign of irritation for anyone familiar with Chimera's body language. Voltra was familiar enough to find it amusing. Vexa wore a fitted medical uniform reinforced with armored panels and protective leathers. Utility pouches hung from her belt, each arranged with obsessive precision. Diagnostic tools, scanners, injectors, and emergency supplies all sat exactly where they belonged. Unlike Voltra, who seemed to store medical equipment wherever there happened to be an empty strap, pocket, or surface, Vexa actually knew where her tools were. The nurse already looked annoyed, not angry. Not frustrated, annoyed. Years of working for Dr. Voltra had refined the emotion into an art form. Her ears were angled slightly backward as she entered the room. Her tail moved once behind her before going still. The feathers along her neck remained perfectly groomed, despite whatever fresh disaster she was about to deliver. Voltra glanced up from her desk. Vexa noticed 3 things immediately. The first was that Voltra was still working through paperwork. The second was that she appeared deeply unhappy about it. The third was that several scalpels had been stacked in a manner suggesting they had narrowly survived being thrown into a nearby wall. Vexa shot the poster of Nyx on the wall that had several scalpels sticking out of it.
"You've had a productive morning,"
Vexa said politely. Vexa crossed the room and placed the glowing tablet on the desk. Voltra stared at it, then at Vexa, then back at the tablet. Voltra raised a brow before simply turning back to her monitor. Neither woman spoke. Eventually, Vexa sighed. The sound carried the weight of someone who already regretted this conversation.
"The shipping company appealed,"
Vexa said. Voltra's ears flattened slightly. A dangerous sign. Vexa had learned to recognize them. She had also learned to ignore them. Mostly, Voltra picked up the tablet. Golden eyes scanned the report. The longer she read, the more offended she looked. Vexa found this mildly encouraging. It meant she had not yet reached the stage where she started threatening people. That usually came later. Voltra opened another file and her tail began to tap slowly against the floor. Vexa mentally started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. The tapping stopped. Voltra looked up.
Vexa.
Voltra hissed. There it was. Vexa straightened slightly. The use of her name was rarely a good sign.
Yes, doctor?
She replied. Voltra looked down at the report, then back at Vexa, then back at the report as if she expected the numbers to change.
This slave held her position for 20 years.
Yes.
Vexa replied,
20 years of training, food, and housing were invested into this slave. If they had died, that investment would have been lost.
Voltra hissed as she turned back to her glowing monitor, the report's glow reflecting in her golden eyes. One claw rested against the side of her muzzle. The other slowly scrolled through the document. The movement stopped. Voltra's eyes narrowed. A few seconds passed before she scrolled back up. Not quickly. Deliberately. The same paragraph appeared on the screen again. Voltra read it a second time. Then a third. Her ears flattened slightly against her head. With each passing read, Voltra looked increasingly offended. Not morally offended, but personally offended, like someone had walked into her office and challenged basic mathematics. Vexa had seen this expression before. It usually preceded an argument. Voltra leaned back in her chair. The chair creaked ominously beneath her weight. Then she closed the report and asked,
Why are they stupid?
Vexa closed her eyes. Not because she was surprised, but because she wasn't. Working for Voltra meant eventually accepting that every conversation would reach this point somehow.
Doctor?
Vexa sighed.
They are.
Voltra hissed.
Doctor, you can't just send them to collections for being stupid. You need to follow protocol.
Vexa said.
The shipping company is requesting an explanation.
They spent 20 years training a slave. They then damaged the slave due to their own negligence. I fixed their property. Only after I fix their property do they think doing so is too expensive.
Voltra hissed with irritation. Vexa watched the pieces connect behind Voltra's eyes. It was like watching a predator discover someone had hidden a trap inside its food bowl. Voltra looked genuinely insulted.
They're idiots.
Voltra said.
Please inform them that if they genuinely believe replacing 20 years of experience is cheaper than paying one medical bill, they are too incompetent to operate a shipping company.
The nurse failed to suppress the smile.
I don't think I can write that.
Vexa said. Voltra's tail twitched.
Why not?
Because they'll complain.
Vexa replied.
They already complained.
Voltra hissed.
Fine.
Voltra tapped a talon-tipped finger on the desk for a few seconds before saying,
Tell them I have reviewed their request and determined they are idiots.
The nurse buried her face behind the tablet.
Doctor.
Vexa was cut off by Voltra.
Tell them I'm willing to explain the mathematics personally. I'll even use nice small words so they can understand basic economics.
Voltra paused for a moment before moving a talon-tipped finger to her monitor.
In fact, don't. I'll set up a meeting and tell them myself. I want to see what the face of incompetence looks like.
The sharp chime of the emergency alert echoed through the office, immediately followed by the clinic's internal notification system. Voltra's ears twitched. Her eyes moved from the report to the alert icon that had appeared in the corner of her display. Emergency surgical consult requested. Voltra straightened slightly. The irritation remained. It simply found itself competing with something more interesting. Her chair rolled backward across the floor as she reached for the heavy medical coat hanging beside her desk. The dark garment settled across her shoulders with practiced familiarity. Belts laden with surgical tools shifted as she fastened them into place. A scanner disappeared into one pouch, an injector into another. By the time she reached the office door, she had already fallen into the rhythm of preparation.